I don't think it's World War III. I don't think, but if it's World War III, if Russia and China, for example, die on the Iranian hill, and I don't see them do it. They have enough trouble in and of themselves. I mean, we see how Russia is getting bogged down in Ukraine. See how China is preserving its own national interests and even trying to compromise with the United States or signing some sort of a deal with Scott Bessent, the Secretary of Treasury, in order to de-escalate with the United States. Of course, they have interests in Iran. It's sort of a test case to see Western resilience, but I don't think they will go as far as to say we will go to World War III on behalf of Iran. I don't think they're going to do such a rushed act, but I do think we need to be careful. The Iranian regime is dangerous, and we did the right thing of stopping it. They are openly calling for Israel destruction, and if Israeli officials are to be believed, and I do believe them because we have amazing intelligence, that Iran, and that's what Netanyahu and the IDF said, that Iran made a decision to break out to nuclear weapons, and all their stockpile of 60% enriched uranium will become weapon grade 90% enriched uranium very soon.
So that obviously means that it's not the danger's not gone.
Danger's not gone, but I don't think Israel will finish this war. Since you embarked on this very risky campaign, and Israel proved that it can walk the walk, not just talk the talk. We made good on our promise, and now I don't think Israel will finish this campaign before we put a lid on Iran's nuclear program. I don't think that's going to happen.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and drop a quick comment to help us keep the conversations going. This podcast is sponsored by KEF International.
Today, look about the 12-Day War. What do Iranian people think of the war? Do they understand what's happening?
Obviously, the 12-day war between Israel and Iran is part of the 640-day war Iran started on October 7, 2023. For many Israelis, the war has been going on for almost 2 years. These 12 days were a specific snapshot of a burst clash between Israel and Iran, and Israel made spectacular achievements here, taking on the Iranian nuclear program, causing grave damage to its nuclear program, its ballistic missile program, taking off many of its leaders and the leading scientists. And that was also, I think, a declaration of presence by Israel. That was a foothold by Israel in Iran, 1,500 kilometers away, one of the largest countries in the world. If you put Israel, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, and Turkey combined, you'll still have a little bit left over in Iran. It's a huge country and hard to control. The Iranian regime understood that to effectively control the population, to control the narrative, and have an external enemy. The Iranian regime is doing just that by first controlling the narrative, and with the Islamic Republic of Iran broadcasting the same television radio station that was bombed by the IDF, live on television. So many Iranians were secretly extremely happy by this. Any authoritarian regime must control the narrative. We saw it in Nazi Germany, in the USSR. The Iranian regime also has external enemies. Rally around the flag. It's a psychological phenomenon where they say Israel, America, these are your enemies. Rally around us against them. You don't have tangible advantages to offer them, so they have to have an external enemy.
Iran is already doing this for years. We have the famous picture of the F-35.
That was a Chilean pilot, a female Chilean pilot from 2021. That was allegedly an Israeli female pilot that was taken captive by, and that was an old picture from Chile with a little Cessna, a small jet instead of an F-35.
Also, the jet kind of did look real. Already for years, they're working on building a narrative, and if it's in universities in Europe, and building an agenda, maybe getting a perspective of the background.
That's what the Iranian regime has been leading for years. They long understood that information has been a dimension of warfare. If you control the sphere of information, you basically control everything. You can make people believe anything. Last year, the Director of National Intelligence, Avril Haines in the US, she said that Iran is trying to manipulate the American population, to sow distrust in democratic institutions, to fund anti-American, anti-Israeli encampments and rallies in the US. Many things you saw in the US encampments, pro-Palestinian NGOs leading anti-Semitic rallies were funded by Iran. Not necessarily because they care about the Palestinian cause, because they really want to sow instability in the West. That's the goal. If that's the goal, you can do anything, like Stalin did. Stalin wanted to maneuver and leverage all of its population into one narrative. Iran, I think, has taken a page right out of the playbook. You see, I'm doing my homework. And I brought this quote for you. Stalin himself wrote some of these history books. He took the trouble, but that was the main history book of the USSR, history of the All-Union Communist Party, sold 43 million copies by the time Stalin died. And I consumed it in 63 languages. If you read it and were taught by it, that's all you knew. Historian Robert Conquest said that real facts, real statistics disappeared into the realm of fantasy. History was rewritten. Unpersons disappeared from the official record. A new past as well as a new present was imposed on the captive minds of the Soviet population. So you see that if you have millions of people that you make them believe anything, you generate a whole new generation of human beings that are basically your soldiers, aware or not, just by believing. I think that's what Iran is trying to do in the US, make them believe Israel is a genocidal state. That's what Hamas is doing with the help of Iran, trying to make them believe that Israel commits genocide amongst Palestinians. That's what they're trying to do, not necessarily because they're pro-Palestinian, because they want to sow instability in the West, and Israel is the pariah on the way to it.
They're trying to find pain points at different parts of society, trying to separate us by that. They're looking for these pain points. That's the most effective way. They're not going to everybody. They're showing out to certain sectors.
In Iran, they want all the population to believe their lies, but any population segment requires something else. In the US, they mostly aim for the young, progressive population in campuses. You can take a scalpel and fashion their beliefs. It's that simple. So it's really that easy. There were many reports in New York Post and elsewhere about mosques in Houston, Texas, where they're actually community centers, allegedly, but they're actually funding some of these encampments, and they're heavily Shiite mosques funded by Iran. Big money place where young college students think that they're going on a campus and they're really upset by the Palestine cause and they are going on a protest, but they are unaware that they are being manipulated by the Iranian regime. You don't aware that it's problematic, but they make you believe like as if you really do believe that Israel commits genocide in Gaza or that Iran has dropped an F-35 plane or they hit the Mossad headquarters. I don't know if you saw that AI image. That one wasn't well done. This is what they're trying to do.
Like where all the oil money goes, that's one of the solutions. And they penetrate the European today. It's pretty far left in general, if Trump's president or not. But how the Iran and the Shias, how they penetrate to the European mindset?
They're doing several things. They have presence in Europe.
What does that mean when you say presence?
Iranian embassies don't normally function as embassies. Usually an ambassador goes and receives directives from his country of origin, and he's the point of contact with the local government. There were many reports by the Middle East Forum, by various think tanks about how the Iranian regime takes these embassies and uses them like cultural attachés or all sorts of made-up positions to sow instability in Europe. There are many attempts in Denmark, in Sweden, in the United Kingdom, in France, to carry out terrorist attacks, some of them successfully. In Paris, they tried to blow up a Mujahideen Khalq conference.
They can track this back to Iran.
These are direct instructions by the Iranian leader and by the Iranian regime. And I know that because I've been researching it with all these various reports and what these intelligence agencies, all this open source information indicates, look, we can't know for sure, but there's strong indication that the Iranians are behind it, as well as some people that were caught, that were paid for it by IRGC's Quds Force, those who tried to assassinate Israelis in Cyprus or in Bulgaria or Georgia. All these attempts aim at, yes, killing Israelis and carry out terrorist attacks, but more importantly, they sow instability in the West. That's the real objective.
Right, and you can track down the direct sources of what's happening.
It's not a big secret if you just listen to what they're saying. You listen to the Supreme Leader in his sermons, like just last year, he said that the university students in the West are our resistance branch. That's what he said. You are the branch of the resistance front. So this is pretty compelling to hear from Supreme Leader of a country meddling in the affairs of another country.
Is this an obvious way of war, this proxy brainwashing all over the world? So I guess it's not a new way, but how does this connect to their ideology? Using this kind of war, not direct war. It looks like the whole world's kind of going in that direction. Maybe World War III will be a
proxy war, or we already are living in a Cold War. That's practically a world war, but it's a Cold War driven by proxies. Russia and the United States will not clash directly. It's conducted in Ukraine.
So you don't get your hands dirty?
The balance of power is way too high, and the risks here are way too high. The US, Russia, China, they can't engage in a hot war. It can get messy, and you can never anticipate the results. You don't seriously expect the United States and Russia to go in war. They didn't even do it in the Cold War. Do it for proxy warfare. And You see how insidious this is, that if Russia, for example, is running armies of bots on X, on Facebook, Instagram, they work in sowing instability in the West. They're gaslighting young populations in the US to believe Russia offered Ukraine a peace deal, or that Ukraine joining NATO was a trigger, or how Zelensky could have avoided the war if only he agreed to certain conditions put by Russia. All that is not true, but they want them to believe it. They cannot win militarily, especially Iran over Israel, but they can cause significant damage. The more people rally around Iran in the West, the more they have strength. It's really their military inferiority that's driving them, because they can invade the minds of American people. That's the real challenge here. Iran is running whole bot farms of people who sit and work for every hour. You get multiple posts and tweets.
People, it's real or AI?
I think these are real people.
Are you joining?
Yeah, I am. I'm just trying to figure out how to push the right button to get back in. Although, don't worry.
No, because
Okay.
you also can see.
Yeah, I do. But
Okay, so we'll keep on. So we're talking about so their influence, and now that they're the army of bots, AI bots, it's
Right.
influencing the network. Do you also find a current correlation with this ideology? Do you find it correlated to Russia or to China? Or you see this as a separate Xi thing?
They've taken page out of this playbook. So does Iran. Has Osima, the television and radio network. It has Iran, it has ISNA, Fars News, all these organizations whose job is to disseminate disinformation. That's what they're doing. They disseminate disinformation inside Iran and around the West. This IRIB, Sadao Sima organization, the television and radio organization, is budget of like almost $400 million.
Wow.
And their instructions come directly from the highest levels of the Iranian regime. And that's their job, to engineer the minds of the people. You remember the human beings factory I mentioned? This is their job. The U.S. Department of Treasury sanctioned them for being to participate in illicit activities, disinformation and all that. So they have taken a page directly from Stalin's playbook. If you saw that short video clip of that KGB officer who defected to the West, Yuri Bezmenov, is a KGB officer who defected to the West several decades ago. He gave a famous interview where he said that these are the methods of the KGB, ideological subversion. Like the Russians aim, even decades ago, not just today, the age of social media. Even then, their mission was to sow instability in the West and to really hammer into the fault lines of the West. They're not necessarily want to defeat the West in the battlefield, but they understand that if you control the sphere of information, then you are really on your upper hand here. And so that's what Bezmenov said. Bezmenov said that if you can make people believe their government is corrupt and acting against them, and they're doing all sorts of crazy things and hiding information from them, I don't know, anything, the pro-Palestinian cause, anything, all these things are simply convenient tools to convey a message and make people believe things that will make them more efficient soldiers of Russia or Iran, not America. That's the main goal. If you weaken the West from within, you make real gains.
how did the Marxists, the Soviets, get in line with the Muslims? They're not ideologically coherent. They don't have anything in common aside from being dictatorships.
Let me ask you this. What is the trans movement? It goes hand in hand with the Palestine movement.
Yeah, right.
If you are LGBT going to a Palestinian city, you probably are going to meet your fate fairly soon. This is pure protectionist, interest-driven calculation, where they say the Iranians and radical Islam are against the West. Great, we've got a common enemy. Let's join hands. Iran, as a Shiite country, hates Sunni terrorist organizations like Hamas. Many ask how come that Hamas, a Sunni organization, is reliant upon Iran, a Shiite country. There's supposed to be hatred and animosity between Shiite and Sunnis. They have one common denominator. They hate Israel. And so they are willing to join to the reunion of battles.
It's like an underdog game, but they're getting up on each other, like collaborating with each other.
That's how they work.
How much, like a citizen in Iran, know? What does he know? Because obviously the press is controlled. There's social media, the internet is monitored and censored. So I said you can use a VPN. Is it that simple? If I just turn on like ExpressVPN and if I can just watch CNN?
It's not,
or,
because
Fox News?
Yeah, even for VPN you need internet, basically. And if internet is cut off, then you're in a problem. And you need to be very talented with AI or with the VPN. You can log in incognito, use avatars, use VPN. In the end, you need to be very brave to do that. But it's a rogue regime with limited access. The only mean is to talk to people directly. But those who could, like people, Iranians who made Aliyah to Israel, they tell me that the control of information by the regime is very strong, to the point where they believe Israel is committing crimes they were told to believe. If you wake up in the morning, 7 a.m., you are in the school courtyard and you shout out loud, Mark Bar, death to America, death to Israel. You are told to believe that Israel puts drugs, flour, brought to Palestinians in the Gaza Strip in order to drug them. I remember fake stories of soldiers spitting on cars in order to infect Palestinians with COVID.
People are becoming really creative.
If you're a soldier that has COVID, obviously you're going to be quarantined. And if you spit on a car's door, probably not the best way to infect someone. I think that's really the goal, to sow instability and undermine trust in institutions. The U.S. has intelligence that Iran and Russia are active in trying to pay NGOs, pay all these organizations, Shiite mosques, all these elements to lead protests and storm social media and propagate all these narratives. That's what they're doing. So they want to make you believe that Israel takes organs off the bodies of Palestinian children for organ implants or all sorts of things. But they also sow disinformation on the United States itself. That's their goal. That's how they operate.
If we use overwhelming force, is it conceivable they would surrender when one nation tried to destroy another? It was for the purpose of taking over that nation, and that's exactly what the Arab nations would choose to do, had they the power to do. Now, why does the West not permit themselves the same? Colonialism was alive for many years, and then all of a sudden, we're in this modern time, and only the bad guys have guns? Like, only the bad guys want to take over everybody else. And the good guys want everybody to live together. But that's not going to happen. The bad guys are not going to give up until they take over, conquer, possess the territory, government, and all the goods of America, Israel, and every other Western country. They're well on their way. If Europe is a model, their vectors are in place. The West about liberal democracy, give everybody an equal vote, even if they're trying to kill you. So what's the story? When is the West going to wake up and say, these people have been trying to kill us for years. They're trying to infiltrate our government, academy, and every other institution they can influence. If we let it go, it will be gone. It seems like the West is adopting the death cult of, we really had nothing to offer the rest of the world. This is the leftist theology, that we really had nothing to offer anybody, and we were oppressors, and better, we should just disappear. Western civilization should disappear.
It's fatigue it talked about in the West. And I think there is like Douglas Murray who talked about the certain sense of fatigue in the West, that kind of giving up on the Western story, and they are far less motivated. If you're a young person in Germany who wants to go to a nice engineering job and having a day job 9 to 5, and then maybe go to the gym, maybe visit a friend, maybe go out to a walk, and then go to bed. That's what you do. You don't have ideological expectations from life.
Right.
And these people are driven by ideology, by struggle. Now, that's the point. There is a big imbalance here between the West who seeks life. Now, after World War II, West who seeks life, and those who seek destruction. There is no void in war. If you give up and lay down your arms, somebody else is going to fill it. If the European Union comes and says, we don't have a European army, we don't need arms today. This is where the EU documents talk about, that they're going to use soft power, their beacon, very big beacon of light, in order to attract with soft power, reduce the chances of conflict. When Russia, Iran, Hamas try to storm the battlefield, that's what they do. Have to deal with it. I don't like it, but they have to be prepared. I think that's what Israel understands. Israel is heavily reliant on hard power.
We've taken defensive stances over, and once we've won, we say, we want to live peacefully with you, so we'll give you control. We know they don't want coexistence, but they will not stop until they, God forbid, destroy us. The message is clear. Iran would like to destroy America. Iran would like to destroy Western culture and take over the world. It's part of their theology. Really only 20% of 2 billion people, that's 400 million, who want to destroy us.
The 7th of October was a wake-up call.
63% of Democrats in America believe Israel is at fault.
Israel always relied on the battlefield, and we were not so strong with the information warfare or propaganda. They told me you can translate Hasbah to English as bad propaganda. I don't know why we're not leveraging them to make the case of Israel around the world.
Weird.
Take Gaza, for example. You see how international organizations actively work for that pro-Palestinian cause. That serves Iran, that even serves Russia. And you see how any narrative that contradicts Israel is warmly welcomed, even the craziest ones.
Right.
Like you saw how AP, the BBC, recently ran a story that over 30 Palestinians were killed in a food distribution point in Gaza. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, a joint venture by Israel and the United States to control humanitarian aid. And they hate it. They really hate it. They try to delegitimize and slander it through all sorts of crazy stories. They come to collect food, and then the IDF shoots them. Over 30 Palestinians killed by shooting near a food collection point. Hamas is panicked by the notion of Israel and the United States taking control of humanitarian aid, because that takes away all of their leverage, all the control over the population. So they would say anything. The problem is not the Hamas. The problem is with Western news organizations who take any story that contradicts Israel. If you check the facts, you would see that a Hamas gunman opens fire on his own people just to have killed Palestinians, and everyone is on a whirlwind. Oh my God, there were Palestinians killed. Probably Israel killed them. And then you see how Hamas earned some $500 million by taking over the humanitarian aid and selling it off. So you see the level of interest to slander it and make mockery out of it. The problem is that the UN would like to keep the distribution of humanitarian aid in Gaza. We had a circle here of Hamas in the service of the United Nations and others who seek to counter Israel, all of which to tell us that it's a struggle over money, over control, over power, not necessarily over justice. And we need to be very careful when it comes to the sphere of information, what information we take in and just take for granted, and where we say, okay, we're being gaslit here.
Historically, like the biblical history, it doesn't say, make a good name for yourself among the nations. It says Israel's going to be isolated, and there are wars. When there's a war, for your existence, you're not supposed to hold back. You're supposed to do what wars used to be, which if somebody tries to destroy you, you take over their country, and you take over their government. It still has as its core jihad and Sharia law and intolerance of any other government, any other politic, any other religion. We'll suspend our disbelief that they can change. They can be like what we used to think about Gaza. They just want a good life.
They assume everyone wants the same thing. That's what they assume.
I'm just saying that one of the rabbis of a couple of hundred years ago, the genius of Vilna in Lithuania, said that Islam would be conquered by war, would be conquered by love. So we have a good part of the population that we're going to have a positive relationship with. But the other part, Ishmael was a wild ass of a man, and his hand was against everyone. And it's pretty clear. If somebody's trying to destroy you and they're not going to give up, guess what? You have to fight and destroy them first. I don't see a middle ground. If somebody has an ideology and they keep telling you we want to destroy you, and you continue to disbelieve them, that doesn't sound like a recipe for survival. It sounds like a recipe for self-destruction.
Lethal optimism. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. If we let our enemies survive, if we don't let them survive as our enemies, we will survive. The sword will be made into plowshares. If we let them survive and let their ideology survive, people say, you can't destroy an ideology. You have to destroy it. If the ideology is based on destroying you, then you have a responsibility to destroy that ideology.
Talk to George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, whose ideology survived because it was a tenable one, the U.S. Constitution. But the other ideology did not survive, which is slavery. And to anyone who says that ideology cannot be wiped out, only look no further than slavery. It was widespread to the level it was common and mainstream slavery until not long ago. And today only Mauritania still has where the black population is enslaved by the ethnically Arab population. Women's right to vote, women's full equality under the law, that's also fairly innovative. So you can wipe out an ideology, Nazi Germany, and look at how Japan is doing today. I don't need all Hamas militants to be wiped out. All I need is for Hamas's capabilities to be destroyed, to take over Gaza, to take away the civilian capabilities, and then to find alternatives that are viable. Not Hamas, not Jihad, not Fatah. All these organizations are well funded by Iran and driven by corruption and jihadist ideology. I don't need them next to Israel. The United States could choose to leave Afghanistan because it's halfway around the world. Nir Oz are several yards away from Gaza. People of Nir Oz can no longer wake up and see terrorists in their backyard. They cannot. And that's a very simple requirement.
Is there really an alternative, you think, today to?
I think so, because the GHF showed success. We should build on that. Israel should continue to take the population into open fields to have these humanitarian islands. December 23. They said the population has to be driven out of the big cities. When you have Hamas and you have tunnels, and to drive them into these humanitarian islands, where you give them shelter, food, field hospitals and schools, you control them. Hamas doesn't control them. They're away from the urban centers, and Hamas is deprived out of a major card that it holds. every time that Israel operates against Hamas, you can't have civilian casualties. And it trashes Israel's name around the world, and Hamas thrives off of it. So the less civilians involved, the better for Israel. So you take them to these islands, they go through vetting and screening to make sure they have no weapons, they get a biometric ID, because at the service of the objective, to take out Hamas from Gaza. I don't need them to control Gaza.
What about all these creative solutions of Saudi and UAE making all these synergies between these multi-trillion dollar...
Absolutely. That's possible in the long term.
Yeah.
But right now, neither Saudi nor the UAE will conquer Gaza and force Hamas out of power. It's a multi-phase plan. Israel taking over temporarily, and then we'll find a long-term arrangement.
Anyways, I think we're on different vectors because I don't see how, if their plan is to destroy the Western world, and now Turkey has stepped up and said, we're the next Iran. And if these people are saying they want to destroy Western civilization, and you hear it over and over in northern European countries and probably elsewhere as well, and not to take them at their word,
but
then
try to explain friends in the West.
Why are you speaking about Hamas? Hamas is one tiny group. We're talking about 2 billion people. Even if only 10% is radical, you have to have a global war effort to undermine the countries that have voiced their desire to destroy Western civilization.
It's usually in sensitive.
Let me state it simply.
I don't know. We have Al-Juani, the Al-Qaeda guy, that now he says, maybe we'll do a peace thing with Israel, maybe becoming more Western, like this really nice long beer.
Right.
And who knows if it's a scheme.
The solution is, in some way, you have to destroy an ideology whose core is based on destroying Western civilization. So you cannot continue to live in a world where 2 billion people have loyalty to ideology that vows to destroy you. Israel is not going to have much luck improving its image. It's clear Israel is not on its way to a public relations victory. So if Israel says, we are going to wage an all-out war against whoever has vowed to destroy us, that includes Iran, then you take over Iran and destroy Iran, destroy its ability to guide itself.
I want to be more prudent than that. I want to be more prudent because we have to play a game of possibilities and scenarios and realistic alternatives. We can't make problems go away because we can't paint a very simplistic picture of if these 2 billion people were to go away or if Iran were to go away, then our problem solved, because we saw how ideologies can sprout even among Europeans in Nazi Germany, and problems can sprout in Russia. My point is, I agree Islam as a whole poses a threat to the West. I don't know if 2 billion people are part of the problem. I think there is a hardline core there, jihadist believer, and a much bigger swath of people who are passive believers, as in they're not jihadists. We're not going to pass to action, but they tacitly give their approval, like 85% of the Palestinians who are supportive of October 7. We're talking about West Bank and Gaza, 85% approval. Now it's less because they see ramifications. But you see the big enthusiasm. It says that these terrorists were the shining stars in the bright sky of the Palestinian struggle. The deputy of the bus, Mahmoud al-Alou, said Palestinians in the West Bank should rally against Israelis and recreate the joyful day of October 7. So you see how it's mainstream, jihadist ideologies against Palestinians. It does not infer that we can get rid of 5 million Palestinians. It does not infer that. But what we can do is suppress capabilities, lower friction with Israel, and have such military supremacy that it will be unfeasible for them to ever win us in the battlefield. And it also means to make good on Trump's plan to move as many Palestinians as want to immigrate to Africa and other places, Indonesia, whatever, to lower the danger. A Palestinian in Indonesia or in Somalia is less of a danger to me than a Palestinian who lives feet away from Israeli homes. All these things combined, Israel has to start making decisions. We cannot drag our feet anymore and kick the can down the road in Judea and Samaria. We have to enact sovereignty over the Jordan Valley and vast swaths of Area C and the rest. And
Palestinians run themselves?
Since the Oslo Accords, there were Arab Israelis who said the occupation is over because the Oslo Accords gave them self-governance, and it gave them the Palestinian Authority, and it gave them parliament. They pay $400 million a year to terrorists as a reward for killing Jews. And those prisoners incarcerated in Israeli prisons, not because Israel wants to imprison them, But because they are terrorists who committed crimes. In any country, try criminals and terrorists. But these guys, as opposed to other terrorists in the world, are being rewarded financially by the PA. And when they get released, if they get released, they get free stuff. The problem is not just Hamas. The problem is the institutions of the Palestinian movement itself. It does not infer that the millions of Palestinians we can get rid of them. We should encourage this willful migration and these emirates, like these city-states. And we should enact our sovereignty of the rest of the territory and make sure that they never have the capability. In Gaza, we keep mowing the lawn. In Gaza, no Israeli soldier since the disengagement, except rare, not full military conquest. We stopped mowing the lawn. Sprouted was these roots of evil, really, the armies of terrorism. Hamas is not just a terrorist group, it's an army. It used to be one of the strongest militaries in the world if you take out maybe number 30 or 40 in the world, which is not bad. Hamas had major capabilities. I think we need to let Palestinians control over the day-to-day lives of the population in the local level, not to give them a state, God forbid, and not to topple the Palestinian Authority, in my view. But I don't think that unless we have a magic way to take them all and make them move to Jordan, and I seriously doubt that's going to happen, we need to get realistic about it. It does not infer that Israel is an occupier. It does not infer that Israel commits genocide. I'm saying that we have already grown disillusioned by making peace with the Palestinians. I don't think it will ever happen, but we can find some elements who want to live and find common sense ways for locals to run local shops. The job initiative. I love it. I'm suspicious. I'm always suspicious. I don't know where it's going to lead. Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify. Trust but verify. I don't trust we tried the Palestinian Authority and Hamas and it didn't work. I want to control as much territory as I can. And in those enclaves, Hebron and Jenin, I want Palestinians to run everyday civilian lives, but I want Israel to keep military freedom of action. Let's see if in the next 50 years the Palestinians become Swedish.
So,
I don't want to
respect and understand one thing, power. If Israel acts with overwhelming power, then the likelihood that they would say, oh, guess what? We're going to stop fighting you for a while because we don't want to be destroyed. I don't understand why Israel would, aside from Israel's relationship with America and the rest of the world, every single war is an example of Israel victory, Israel compromising with people they've won over.
Egypt and Jordan, you gave a little to Egypt, but it paid off.
Egypt
is an insignificant.
I'm honestly worried about it.
For 50 years.
I like the peace with Egypt. I just don't understand what came out of it. We gave up territory for what? Egypt is significantly weaker militarily than Israel. Of course, ground forces are a threat, but there could be other arrangements between Israel and...
a huge country. Listen, they have a navy.
And all the arms to Hamas came through Egypt. Egypt did not allow Palestinians who wanted to leave to come into Egypt. Why is it that no Arab countries, 22 Arab countries, want to accept Palestinian refugees?
You asked why Palestinian refugees were not allowed to leave Gaza to Egypt into safe zones. Imagine, in the war in Ukraine, you had Moldova, Hungary, Poland, all these countries block Ukrainian refugees. Imagine the uproar.
Right.
Nobody even talks about it, how Egypt blocks Palestinian refugees from escaping a war zone. Nobody talks about it. Antonio Guterres visited Egypt, went to the Rafah crossing. There are 250 hostages in Gaza. The war just started. There was the worst massacre in Jewish people's history after the Holocaust. And what he chooses to do is come to the Rafah crossing and say there's starvation in Gaza. Like a week after the war started. There's already starvation. And he doesn't say a word about his host, the Egyptian president, who wouldn't take one Palestinian refugee. You cannot ignore that. The United Nations is actively participating in the anti-Israel trends around the world. If you check, whatever criticism comes on Israel on Gaza mainly focuses on the number of civilian casualties, right? Kill a lot of children, kill a lot of women and children. Many Israelis become defensive and say, we just experienced the worst massacre in history. What they should say is, where's the numbers from? Where are the numbers from? The United Nations is saying that. Then you check the report and the little footnote, it says the Gaza Ministry of Health. They just process those bogus figures, the United Nations or Hamas's figures, claim Israel killed 200 Palestinians today, 50,000 children. No one can account for that. Independents who went into Gaza tried to account for that, found no evidence. Everyone from Macron to former U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin keeps quoting those figures who are completely false. And it doesn't matter how high up you are. That's why I talk about Soviet disinformation, because it's dangerous and insidious to Western stability to start believing these lies. I don't think it's just about being accurate. It's about policy. You determine whether or not you want Israel to stop fighting based on these numbers. And these are totally false. See how Andrew Fox, the commander of the UN Central Command, are unequivocal. They say Israel is exemplary to other Western countries. There is nothing like that in urban warfare, 1.5 on 1 military-civilian ratio. There is nothing like it in Afghanistan, Iraq. We killed 80% civilian. There is nothing like it in history. It's incredible what Israel has been able to accomplish and be so prudent on civilian casualties. Hamas is aware the West is sensitive to pictures of dead children. Even if it's fake, an old TikTok video from Syria, even if it's bogus numbers, Hamas will go for them. That's the problem. I don't think you can ignore that. You can only cheat someone who wants to be cheated. If you are skeptical, you won't believe these numbers.
I thought we could help win the war for truth. It seems like when people are committed, it's the same thing in America. When you're a Democrat, you want to hear Democratic propaganda, and you'll only have ears for Democratic propaganda. When you're a Republican, you only have ears for Republican propaganda.
That's how news works today. The psychology behind the social networks. You only see things you want to see.
Right. That's the algorithm.
That's why they're successful. They control the search and feed you things you want to see. So nobody's actually open up to hearing other.
They're creating this echo chamber. And this is how these algorithms work.
If the prophecy says Israel will be isolated, stop acting like a ghetto Jew and start acting like a conquering empire. Even in biblical sources, the borders of Israel extend to Iran, Iraq, Lebanon, and Syria. If Israel does not do that, I see that Europe will go, the old man of Europe will go into, they're not having any children. The only people having children are the Muslims. It will disappear. In 50 years, there will be no Western civilization in Europe. And America, see how America thinks it can tolerate people who vowed to destroy them. And eventually, they'll buy a nuclear weapon from North Korea or China and send it to America. What makes America think that they're going to be invulnerable forever and that Iran and whoever else wants to destroy Western civilization will not enact their ideology? What kind of world do they believe in that people will just say things and never actually do them?
Super optimistic.
So I agree with a lot of what you said. We need to create a conversation where we don't need to hate immigrants. We just need to keep the civilization of our country intact. Immigration does not infer a total uncontrolled flood of people from anywhere in the world. I think that's also the same case for Israel. No one should expect Israel to conduct uncontrolled killing in Gaza. I don't think Israel is doing it. Anyone who has eyeballs sees what Israel is doing in Gaza and says it's a very bizarre way to conduct a genocide if you order a population to leave and then provide them with shelter and humanitarian aid. Should take a more balanced approach. Israel experienced the worst massacre, and the massacre is but a part of a large Iranian effort to take over Israel that maybe an optimistic note would be that more and more people are becoming disillusioned, supporting Israel and understanding it's about Western civilization as a whole. I am optimistic. I see groups from the United States, evangelical Muslims from Azerbaijan, Turkey, Yemen, and the UK, people who are of all faiths who say, we just want to be honest, and we don't like what these jihadists are doing to us. We don't like what Iran is doing to us. The only question is, when is someone going to rise and do something about it? And we have a president in the White House, Trump, whose compass is in the right place. With his leadership and Israel's determination, it's within reach, for sure. But the only question is if we're going to do it, because it's possible to win over in Gaza and to win over Iran. The only question is if we're going to do it, or as you said.
What about Qatar? Qatar is the greatest funder of worldwide terrorism. Absolutely. Is that America has this great relationship and it has no inclination to back off?
When I visit the U.S., I see how more and more people are growing supportive of Israel. They see how efforts to undermine Israel are efforts to undermine America. New York became more red in the last election. America is starting to understand that, put ideology aside for a second, if you only look at it from the pragmatic point of view, you don't have to agree with everything Israel does or says, but it's not a balanced discussion. Israel and the U.S. are in joint hands against the enemies of the West. Everybody understands that. Don't believe everything you hear and check reliable sources. And I do think that this dimension of warfare is critical. This disinformation part. And with that, I think that people curious enough will know we're all in the same boat.
If you listen to this podcast from Kfir International, you'll get more insights on the real reality.
Unbiased Narratives of the Middle East is our name. Please subscribe. comment.
Thank you all.
And it's good we arrived at a solution to the crisis. It's not like mutual destruction. It's self-destruction. It's America swallowing this poison pill of tolerance. I'll leave it at that.